Will AI improve our lives or exterminate the species? What would it take to abolish poverty? Are you eating enough fermented foods? These are some of the questions we've tackled recently on The Next Big Idea. I'm Rufus Griscom, and every week I sit down with the world's leading thinkers for in-depth conversations that will help you live, work, and play smarter. Follow The Next Big Idea wherever you get your podcasts.
Break language barriers instantly by translating up to 44 languages in real time with the HP AI PC, powered by the Intel Core Ultra processor. With the right tools, work doesn't have to feel like work. Learn more at hp.com/AIPC.
Hello, my friend, and welcome to another exciting episode of Negotiate Anything. Thanks for joining us today. With over 10 million downloads and listeners from more than 180 different countries, it's dedicated listeners just like you who have made Negotiate Anything the #1 negotiation podcast in the world. I'm your host, Kwame Christian. I'm a business lawyer, mediator, author, and the proud CEO of the American Negotiation Institute. Now, before we get into today's insightful conversation, I have a golden opportunity for those of you who recognize the power of negotiation in your professional lives. Have you ever found yourself wishing that you could navigate those high-stakes conversations with more confidence? Or perhaps you're looking to empower your team with the art of persuasion and conflict resolution. At the American Negotiation Institute, we've crafted specialized keynotes and workshops tailored for those very needs. We've transformed the negotiation skills of professionals worldwide, and we're eager to do the same for you. We believe the best things in life are on the other side of difficult conversations, and our goal is to help you improve your lives and the lives of those around you, one difficult conversation at a time. Don't let another challenging conversation leave you second guessing. Click the link in the description to discover how we can help you find confidence in conflict, negotiate better deals, and have stronger relationships. Because in the world of business, every conversation counts. And now, without further ado, let's jump into the interview. Adrian, thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure, Kwame. How are you doing?
Man, I am great. It is a pleasure to have you. And how would you just get us started by telling us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, so I've been in the digital transformation and creative space for about the past 10 plus years. I've been around tech companies. I've been involved in e-commerce agencies. And of course, I've been around working in the audio industry. Primarily over the past few years, I've been involved recently in a podcast space. I actually launched my first podcast by accident when I used to run not only a radio station, but I also had my own radio show back in 2011. So what would happen was, this is when I was back at university, I would go around with a dictaphone, recording students, trying to create extra content for my radio show that I had back at university. What I didn't realize was that this actually ended up being podcast without realizing it, because I'm recording pre-recorded content and I'm playing it on air, but I'm also keeping up content for my Facebook page at the time. So yeah, that was a great experience. But yeah, I've been around the creative and digital transformation space for the past 10 plus years, working around business strategy, marketing, e-commerce, and audio production. But right now, I'm primarily focused on consulting, small to medium businesses, helping tech companies and startups in the African space, and also helping people in the world of podcasting to launch, grow, and publish their own podcasts as well.
This is great. And everybody, you need to check out Adrian's work. We're going to put links in the description. The reason why I want to have Adrian on the podcast today is because he is an exceptional interviewer. I've been on his show twice. I think there's a lot that we can learn from an expert interviewer like Adrian when it comes to just connecting with people, creating a strong, respectful connection with the person on the other side. One thing that I didn't hear you say, I want to make sure you say it very clearly, though. Tell us about the podcasting school and the Sound of Accra.
Yes, Kwame. So back in 2021, even 2020, podcasting started to rise in demand unprecedentedly because of the COVID pandemic. We were all locked down. People were looking for a hobby, or they wanted something else to consume their time. a year after 2020, which is when I launched my first podcast, the Sound of a Crowd podcast, I basically decided that I was going to launch a course, because I had people, reach me through the social media, speak to me in person, asking for coaching tips and advice and help in regards to launching, growing and publishing their own podcasts. And then also, I had actually tested the marketing with a very short 15 minutes course on one of these course marketplaces. The results I got was astonishing. Like, I wasn't even expecting people to enroll on that course. There's about 100 or 200 people. So I was like, you know what? If I put that much effort, Kwame, into a podcast course that was pretty much bad in my eyes, how well would I be able to do if I put in all my effort into a high quality podcast course? So I created a 7-hour podcast 2021 called Podcast A to Z. And this particular podcast course was based on helping up and coming podcasters or even existing podcasters get their first 1,000+ listeners, in terms of, because reason why I chose 1,000+ listeners, Kwame, is because in podcasting world, if you want to monetize by CPMs, if you want to monetize by the traditional route, which is cost per milli, CPMs, etc., you need to have a minimum of 1,000 downloads per month, which is what I'm doing, with my niche podcast. So I decided I'll call the course Podcast A to Z, helping you get your first 1,000+ listeners. So that course did really, really well. Currently now it's got about 600 students. And then I decided that recently I was going to spend more time in the podcast industry. I wanted to go a bit more full-time into the industry because I'm so passionate about it. I'm launching another podcast. I'm just so obsessed with the industry. I know what's happening. And I just want to be able to help more students, because I realize that I am more of a community-based person, and it's really important to build such communities, because I also realize, Kwame, that there isn't really too many podcast communities out there. There's lots of people trying to learn and lots of people doing podcasts, but there isn't really much of a community. So my school, Podcast A to Z, is going to be a school not just to help people launch, grow, and publish their own podcasts. It's going to help people to network with each other, grow with each other, learn with each other, but also it's going to help them to be the best possible podcaster they can be, because this industry is only getting bigger and better, just as we discussed before we started recording, Kwame.
Absolutely, man. This is great. This is great. Now, when you think about the keys to interviewing, when you are meeting somebody for the first time as a podcast host, what are the things that you try to do at the beginning of that interaction to make your guest feel comfortable?
That's a great question, Kwame. So I think it's important to have icebreakers under your belts. Always, for me, it's important to do as much research as I can on that guest, because the more you know about that person, the more you know what will pique their interest, the more you know what will help them to make them feel at ease. For example, I know you like cinnamon crunch toast cereal, so I remember I brought that up in one of our first interviews to kind of make you at ease. And I knew you went on TED Talks and you did that fantastic talk. Go watch it, guys, on YouTube. And so for me, it's important to break the ice, make them feel comfortable, ask them questions about what they're up to, what they're doing. And then it's important to also establish common ground. So what interest do you and that person have, so that you can use to quickly, establish some common ground so that you can move forward with the interview. So I think these are some important, straightforward tips that every interviewer should be using.
I love this. What's really cool about this, Adrian, is that this is something that's easily replicable for people who are aspiring podcasters, but also just everyday people having everyday conversations. We want to make sure at the beginning we're making people feel comfortable, and there are certain things that we can do. And what's great about this is that you're doing it in an authentic way that allows you to connect on a human level. When you're doing this and you do a good job of establishing that rapport early on, what would you say are like the biggest psychological benefits?
Yeah, that's a great question, Kwame. So when you're able to establish that rapport earlier on, it just gives you momentum. And sometimes as interviewers, it's so easy to have a whole bunch of questions written out, and you want to be able to kind of like ask all the questions that you've written out. And so you usually have a premeditated workflow that you want to get through so that the interview is picture perfect, how you visualized it before you took it. But really and truly, Kwame, when you build out rapport beforehand, it just gives you the momentum to just take the interview on an unexpected twist, where when you go down that path, the interview ends up being better than you actually thought it was going to be, because really and truly, a lot of people, sometimes some people that want to come in one of my shows and they want me to interview them, sometimes they want me to ask them certain questions, and sometimes they want us to agree in certain questions. But I like to be a little bit more spontaneous, and I like the interview have a life of its own, so that it can be a lot more exciting and it can be a lot more entertaining for both, not only just the interviewer and the interviewee, but also for the audience listening as well.
I love this because this is something that's really underappreciated when it just comes to conversations in general. Momentum. And momentum is this nebulous energy that we all can understand exists, but we can't really put our hands around what it really means. But we know it's there, right? We know it's there when it's there. We know it's not when it's not, right? And it helps you to flow into the conversation. And what do you do in the middle of a conversation if things are going well, and then maybe you ask a question they're not that comfortable with, or they don't know the answer, whatever it happens to be, or maybe there's an interruption? What is it that you can do in the middle of a conversation to regain some of that positive momentum?
Yeah, I guess once again, it's similar to the question you asked, earlier on. I mean, again, it's going back to trying to make them feel at ease. It's going back to trying to calm their nerves and trying to break the ice in some sort of way. I think there was a time when I was interviewing one person.
Hello, my friends. Before we get back to today's episode, I want to ask you a question. Have you ever wondered how to elevate your team's negotiation game and how you can help the folks on your team have better, difficult conversations? At the American Negotiation Institute, we offer transformative keynotes and workshops tailored to empower professionals with top-tier negotiation and conflict resolution skills. Whether it's a keynote for your next event or hands-on training for your team, we've got you covered. Don't just negotiate. Master the art with the American Negotiation Institute. Click the link in the description to find out more. Elevate, negotiate, and succeed.
Introducing the HP AI PC, your powerful AI assistant. Easily search through personal files, gain valuable insights, and make smarter, more informed business decisions. Unlock the future of work today with the HP AI PC, powered by the Intel Core Ultra processor. With the right tools, work doesn't have to feel like work. Learn more at hp.com/AIPC.
And this was actually in Africa. This is when I was shooting a brand new season for the Sound of Accra podcast, which is a podcast where we interview Ghanaian entrepreneurs and creatives around the world. And I had a high-profile guest. She's well known in the continent and in the country. And it got to a point where I asked her a question, and then she kind of reacted in a certain way. But then I kind of changed the subject a bit, and then I kind of focused on her, just letting her know that she's doing a great job, and I just let her know that by the way, we like the fan that you're using to fan yourself. You're doing really, really cool. And then I just changed the subject, and then I just kind of like brought her, kind of like stroked her ego a little bit, and then I kind of brought her back to earth, and then I just quickly moved on to another question. So sometimes you just have to kind of like use the environment and use what you know on that person to try and steer the ship off a rocky course back into its course, so that you can still try and turn it into a good interview. And sometimes this makes for great interviews, because usually there's interviews sometimes that we're so used to, Kwame, we're so used to predictable, traditional, conventional interviews, where sometimes we have to think, whether it's as interviewers, as podcasters, as journalists, whatever you want to call it, Kwame, you have to think about, what can we do to make this a little bit different? What can we do to throw the audience off a little bit, and to throw in a little bit of a curveball, so that this becomes an even more interesting interview. So there's always something you can do to redeem the interview, even during the interview, if you can be witty enough, if you can think fast enough.
I love this. And with this response, listeners, I want you to pay attention to the fact that Adrian recognizes when there is momentum and when there's not momentum. The momentum is important. The flow of the conversation is important. So once he loses it, he doesn't try to like force it back on a really tough subject. He lightens the mood and then redirects to something where there might be more momentum. And so this is a really good way to showcase this skill, because we can recognize that as podcasters, our goal is to establish rapport and help the person feel comfortable and share and allow the conversation to flow. In a negotiation, we might need to recognize that we've hit an impasse, but we might need to revisit that tough part of the conversation. But if we're in the rapport building stage, it might just be chit-chatting, we're trying to get to know somebody, then there's probably no reason to go back onto a part where somebody's uncomfortable. If they're uncomfortable, adjust. If you're in that kind of low stakes element of the conversation. So this is expert level. This is really helpful, especially the fact that you said you pointed out something about her that you admired. And so yes, I think that's a really important emotional payment that helps to make the person not only feel more comfortable, but also feel more positively toward you. Because one of the best ways to get somebody to like you more is to be very clear about articulating how and why you like them. And so you found something that you liked, gave the compliment, and quickly shifted the subject. I think that's a brilliant approach.
Yeah, and it's also really important to know who you're talking to. So if you're dealing with a high-profile guest, of course, you definitely want to do your research, and you definitely want to know what calms them down. You know, you definitely want to maybe focus on striking their ego a bit more, because, you know, that's kind of like the kind of environment they're used to being in. Whereas maybe with a more regular average guest, you know, maybe you may say something that might be, you know, not as, you know, pleasing to them. But they may still be very grateful or very appreciative that they're on your particular show. So they won't take to offense as much as maybe someone that's a bit more high profile would. Yeah.
Agreed. No, you're absolutely right. And one of the things that you mentioned too was being willing to explore an unexpected path during the conversation. And that's something that can throw people a lot of times. But what I've recognized and I've heard so many times on this show is that great negotiators embrace surprise. They recognize that unexpected things will happen and they flow with it. So when something surprising comes up in a conversation, first of all, just mentally, how do you prepare yourself to embrace surprise in those conversations?
You have to be ready for any eventuality, Kwame. And when I have an interviewee or someone on the show, you know, say something and I'm quite surprised on what they say, I just kind of try and mirror the emotions so that I can keep the tone, I can keep the pace of the interview, so that I'm not thrown by the interview and I'm not disturbing the energy of the interview. I think every interview has a different type of energy, and when that surprise or when's that curveball thrown at you rather than you throwing at the other person, I think you should be always in the driving seat as the podcaster, as the interviewer. So I think it's important for you to find a way to mirror, you know, that energy back, to find a way to mirror that conversation that's taken place, so that you can continue to have a smooth course throughout the whole conversation of the podcast, so that this can still become a great conversation for the whole audience and for the listeners.
That's great, man, because you're absolutely right. It's almost like improv. With improv, it's always yes, and somebody gives you a suggestion, you have to roll with it, whatever it is. And that's kind of how it is in the podcast too. They can't come with a certain level of energy or emotion that's unexpected, and then you as a podcaster just kind of like negate that energy. Then it creates awkwardness in the room. And so it's a really tough thing to be able to flow with the energy that you're receiving and then take the conversation in a different direction. And the way that we do that, like you said, is by staying in the driver's seat of the conversation. Now, here's the thing. I've been on your show twice. Like, it doesn't feel like I'm being controlled. It doesn't feel like I'm being manipulated or pushed in different directions. Like, it feels like a mutual exchange, but I recognize you're an expert interviewer, so you're always in the driver's seat. The person doesn't feel like they are being driven or forced in a certain direction. So
I like that,
how do you maintain that control while still letting the interviewee kind of feel safe and flow?
Yeah, I think it's also. I mean, there's times where we've done over 100 conversations on the Sound of a Crowd podcast, by the way, and I think we're now on 120 episodes. And Kwame, thank you so much. And one thing I've definitely learned for sure is that you need to kind of know when you can jump back into the conversation and take back that control. So sometimes when someone is talking about something, you can quickly, if there is a specific key word or there's a key moment that they're talking about, you can quickly jump back in the conversation, say that particular thing that you wanted to say, and then steer the conversation to where you wanted to steer it back to. So it's like a little bit like, I don't know, someone's come and they've taken your keys or they've taken something, and you go run back for the keys to your Mercedes, and then you've got it back, and then you're like, no, I'm going to drive this car. You're not going to drive this car anymore. So a little bit like hide and seek. Sometimes it is a little bit funny or frustrating when a guest is going on longer than you want them to go, so that you can kind of try and make the interview, whether it's 20, 30, an hour long. I know you can edit it out, but I do like to have the whole conversation pretty much done within my time frame. But yeah, it's about knowing when to take back that control in the conversation, whether you're using key moments, key phrases, whether you're using body language to to take that control. You just look out for the right opportunity to take back the control, but make it seem seamless. It has to be seamless. It can't be interruptive, so that the energy, the flow of the conversation continues to be natural and organic, Kwame.
Absolutely. And I love that we keep going back to flow. It's so important because we can feel it, right? And the conversation will have a current. And you have to, but the cool thing about water is that water just takes the shape of whatever vessel it's in, right? So it has a flow, but okay, I didn't know we were going to go that direction, but the conversation just flows. And focus on that key moment part that you said. I love the fact that you talked about the key moments, because let's say somebody talks for 1 or 2 minutes. Great. Everything is cohesive. Everything that they say is important, but that doesn't mean that everything that they say is of equal importance. And so what you're doing is, when you hear it, you're listening, you demonstrate that you're listening by summarizing, and then you focus in on one or two key points, and then you expand on those key points. So the person feels like you're listening, so they feel validated in that way. So they feel a little bit more comfortable relinquishing control, because they're like, Adrian's been listening to me. You see, he identified some of those key points, and he cares about me and is interested in me enough to ask me a question on that key point. And so I'm much obliged to respond. So it's a great way to like be in control of a conversation without being controlling during the conversation.
I love it. That's the difference. Be in control of the conversation and don't be controlling of the conversation. I think that's definitely the differentiator right there.
Okay. So when I started the podcast, nowadays when people say, oh yeah, when I listen to your podcast, I always go back to the beginning, and I like to start from the early episodes. When people say that to you, how does that make you feel?
You know what? I've only had 1 or 2 people come up to me and say, hey, look, I'm going to listen to your whole show, and I'm going to listen right from the very beginning. So I actually don't get a lot of that. But what I do tell, not just like students or people that want to start podcasts, or even YouTubers, even other content creators, is the importance of creating evergreen content that's always going to be relevant, whether it's 10 years from now, 5 years from now, 1 year from now, a few months from now, a few weeks from now, because that content is going to keep people coming back. That content is going to keep people coming back, or even discovering and finding new content. You understand? And this is the importance of building momentum. We're going back to momentum, Kwame. Build a momentum, build a momentum, and this will also add to your flywheel. So, when you have content that's evergreen, and you have content that can be discoverable or searchable, it might not be as popular right now, but maybe in 10 weeks time, Google Trends is going to say this particular piece, this phrase, or this particular piece of content is going to be very in high demand. And before you know it, you've got lots of searches, and the flywheel is going to kick in. That piece of work that you put in 10 weeks ago is going to grow a lot more 10 weeks later.
Yep. I love it. And you're absolutely right. And I think all of us should start thinking of ourselves as micro brands, not even just people who are entrepreneurs, but just people in general, because that positions you well. So think about how you said, hey, all right, before I meet with my guest, I'm going to do a little bit of research. That happens in negotiations and business meetings, all those things. People are going to look you up to figure out who you are. And so you need to be in control of that narrative. So somebody who might not self-identify as a content creator, you are creating content if you post things. And if you're not creating content, you're missing out on a massive opportunity to control the narrative. Because we might say, oh, it's nice to be mysterious, go in as like an unknown quantity. Well, we know that especially in tense situations, if somebody doesn't know about you, that ambiguity is going to be scary. They're going to assume the worst. But if you can start to control that narrative and start to reaffirm the fact just in the marketplace by what you're posting on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on whatever it happens to be, that, hey, I'm a solid person. I care about my family. I care about my job. I'm thinking a lot because I'm sharing articles. These are my thoughts on the articles. And you're just constantly reaffirming to the marketplace that you have value. That alone makes you more persuasive and makes your conversation easier, even though it's not officially part of the conversation.
Absolutely. It all connects the dots. It's bringing everything together.
Exactly. Man, this is good. This is good, man. Well, we're coming up on time. I appreciate this. And I think listeners, you can see why this man is starting a podcasting school. So before you go, Adrian, can you remind the listeners about your company, about the podcast and the upcoming podcasting school too?
Yeah, absolutely. So Kwame, so it's called A2Z Podcasting. We should have a website up soon, a2zpodcasting.com. And essentially it's just me and my team. We're going to be having a community of podcasters who want to learn, grow, and publish their own podcasts. So there'll be cohorts learning taking place. Hopefully they'll be starting from spring. There'll be self-paced courses. They'll be embedded within a community, and people can also purchase standalone. And then there will also be community-based learning and sharing taking place as well. So a whole community of podcasters just learning, growing, and sharing together. And we just want to, create, more value in the podcasting world and help more people that are podcasters or existing podcasters just to continue to learn, share, and grow.
This is great, man. I'm happy for you. This is really exciting, and I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Appreciate it, Kwame. Thank you for your time.
Congratulations! You've just joined an elite club. By listening to a full episode, you're now officially on the Negotiate Anything team. So welcome aboard. What most team members do is they subscribe to the podcast because that allows them to automatically get the latest episodes of the show. The best things in life lie on the other side of difficult conversations. Keep learning, keep practicing, and keep getting better. Your relationships will improve, your career will soar, and you'll have the confidence you need to get the most out of these crucial conversations. Again, thank you for joining the team. We're excited to have you, and I will see you in the next episode. I'll catch you later.